Doctor Who has an amazing penchant for being able to switch up its tone from episode to episode like a light switch. Sometimes the story can be a gigantic comedy mystery, other times a tense thriller, and it can cross genres with relative ease. It's part of what makes the show so unique. However, sometimes, in the nature of the show, can get consumed in darkness. The universe can be a pretty horrifying place, as has been seen in many examples of science fiction, and Doctor Who is no exception. However, this time, we're going to look at one particular story that stands out to me. The Caves of Androzani. Having aired in 1984, a year practically made out of dystopian fiction, this story sees the Fifth Doctor and Perry caught in the story of political turmoil and corruption, while at the same time dying of a brutal disease. Sounds heavy, right? Well, you have no idea. The Caves of Androzani not only is possibly one of the most depressing and bleakest stories to ever carry the Doctor Who name, but also one of the very best, bizarrely enough. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Coming two stories off the heels of one of the darkest Dalek stories ever made, with the Fifth Doctor's longest-serving companion, Tegan Jovanka, leaving because of all the death had just made life a bit unbearable, the penultimate story of Season 21 is written by one of the Doctor Who writing team mainstays, Robert Holmes. The episode is regarded as one of the best in the series, and it's clear to see why through his mastery of the various plot threads in Caves. Not to mention that this is directed by Graham Harper, who went on to direct many episodes of the Russell T Davies era, and in this instance, he went for a very energized style in contrast to the rest of Davies's era. It was a perfect storm. The world building put into play is spectacularly well done and yet oh so simple. We have a war between two opposing sides, all for the control of a substance known as Spectrox. On one hand, you have the military soldiers of the esteemed high-ranked Morgus, and on the other, the less than sane gunrunners of the burnt and deranged scientist Sharaz Jek. The Doctor and Perry are just unfortunate enough to get involved and subsequently poisoned with Spectrox toxemia moments after they arrive. The Doctor is literally in a hellish situation this time around, and they're even very nearly executed by the end of Part 1. The story is horrific on many levels, from the scale of the deaths to the sheer brutality of the characters, even in the small moments. You have the hysterical Salatine laughing in the faces of the Doctor and Perry as he tells them that they're going to die. And of course, Morgus shaking hands with the President, and then subsequently pushing him down a lift shaft. So, let's look at the characters first of all, starting with the villain of the piece. I mean, everyone is of such low moral caliber it's hard to tell, but the worst of the worst is Morgus. He's the main businessman of a human colony who gained a monopoly on the control of Spectrox. As evidenced by the President, when refined, it can extend a human lifespan. He worked with Sharaz Jek, who built up androids in order to collect the war Spectrox, which is otherwise fatal to humans, but then he set Jek up to be killed in a mudslide. Surviving barely, Jek made his androids reclaim the cave, hence the war between Morgus' soldiers and his androids. Of course, Morgus' deviant thinking knew no bounds. He paid gunrunners to supply Jek with weaponry in exchange for Spectrox, so that the war would keep on going, as Spectrox remains to be an in-demand and extremely expensive material. The madman also blew up his own mines and shut down his factories, shipping the unemployed workers off to work at labour camps, which newly opened factories themselves. Same effect, but they are now his slaves. After the Doctor survived execution, he believed it was part of an investigation and murdered the President, before turning the whole incident into an assassination attempt on himself. The man takes "we've got to have money" to a whole new level. And then he requests the lift maintenance engineer shot just to cover his tracks. Just wonderful. But then of course we have the complex and interesting, albeit again morally extremely dubious, Sharaz Jek. Having been wronged by Morgus, Jek is naturally insane after his experiences in the baking chamber, but also desperately lonely due to his constant reflection of how far his life has fallen, as well as the loss of his looks. He is to an extent driven by revenge, but also a quest for beauty, as seen by how he treats Perry with an utterly creepily disgusting and disturbing lust, but also a strange amount of care when he realizes that she's dying. The scenes where he just touches her in lust are just so uncomfortable to watch. However, it doesn't disguise the fact that he's willing to kill for revenge and protection, as he does so in the final confrontation. And then there's the Doctor and Perry, who suffer through this story to painful extents. The Fifth Doctor in particular has put through his paces like never before, and this time he's at his most heroic, as he battles forth against all odds to save his friend, one that he'd really not known for very long at all. He escapes firing squads, mercenaries, oxygen starvation, all to give Perry a second chance at life due to blaming himself for her disease. And at the end, he spills half the milk despite being mere seconds away from safety. All due to a simple error of balance, only enough for one left. The Fifth Doctor does for his last companion what he failed to do for one of his first. Save them from death. However, the most depressing factors of the story come from the multiple aspects within it. The fact that it's really just a display of the dark side of human nature, where everyone is out to betray each other, to steal from each other, and any sense of honour is long gone. Aside from the Doctor and Perry, there's no one in the story that isn't corrupt in some way. And in the end, aside from Perry and Tibbin, Morgus's secretary, everyone else featured in the story dies. All for selfish, small, and ludicrous reasons. Of the Androzani minor side, Perry is the sole survivor of a grand massacre. It's bleak, and you never get the sense that the universe has even been made a little bit better after the events. It's just a story about two characters caught in crossfire trying to survive impossible odds in a dystopian world. And that's really what makes it so good. There's no moment where the Doctor appeals to someone's better nature, or turns the tide of a situation through his written intelligence. It all just goes wrong here. Everything is spat back in his face, and there is no victory. The only thing close to a win he gets is ensuring Perry's survival before he regenerates. And even that features the Master telling him to die. Caves of Androzani is an excellent story, one of the very best in my eyes, and it really sets the tone for how intense a regeneration story can be. However, it is horribly bleak. There's not an element of the story that I say isn't tinged with some form of darkness, and it's definitely one of the most adult Doctor Who stories ever made. So what do you think of this story? Do you enjoy the relentlessly dark atmosphere? Or do you think there's a regeneration story that tops this? Let me know in the comments below. So until next time, see ya!